Good afternoon and welcome to this, our third of our Network Fest webinars. It's great that you've joined us. Welcome back. If you've joined either of our first two webinars, Danny, what have we been talking about this week so far?
Well, on Monday we spoke about how to manage your network, and on Tuesday we tackled disengagement.
And today we'll get on to the topic in just a second. But we always say at the start of these things, we really appreciate people who've made the time to join us, and we particularly appreciate those who have joined us as panelists. But today we have to say our special guest really does take the biscuit. Chris McCarthy, welcome. Chris, tell everyone what time it is for you.
It is now 4:01 a.m. in California.
Chris, thank you very much. And I should say we have got you, it doesn't really work because it's a webinar, but we have got you a special gift with some rocket fuel, high caffeine instant coffee, which we'll just put it there just so you can look at it longingly. And we'll probably post it.
We just need the Star Trek teleporter now to get it to me.
We'll sprinkle some near the camera and see how we go. But Chris, thank you all for joining. My name's Rich.
I'm Danny Ryan.
And I'm Anna Howell.
We will work here at Kaleidoscope. Our particular focus at Kaleidoscope is all about supporting highly effective learning networks, which is the point of Network Fest. And we really hope you're going to be able to get involved in debate and discussion over the next 28 minutes. Anna, how can people get involved?
Yeah, there's two ways that you can join the conversation, either using the chat box that's in front of you or via Twitter using #NetworkFest at Kscope Health.
Excellent, Anna, thank you. And Danny, what are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about what is the best way for your network to communicate. We live in a rapidly advancing technological world. We live in a world of Netflix and microwaves. Ping, your food's done. You don't even need to wait for cinema times anymore to watch movies. And communication is the same. There's so many ways of doing it. People want to do things instantly. Somebody said to me the other day, email is too slow. Can you believe that? So got Chris McCarthy here to lend his experience in Innovation Learning Network, and we're going to be talking about how your network can communicate. Have I missed anything?
Well, I think you can probably clarify for the viewers about whether you really watch films on your microwave. I don't think that's fair.
That's an idea for the future, though. Watch out for the Kaleidoscope Netflix microwave coming your way soon.
Indeed. So I think there's one thing to add is that I think this question about what's the best platform, how do you best get a network to communicate, is probably, I was reflecting on this just this morning, although not quite as early as Chris this morning, it's probably the question I get asked about networks more than any other. About, do we need to set ourselds up as do we need our own forum, or can we use Facebook or LinkedIn, or how do we do it? So great to have a particular session focusing on this and to get some great expertise from Chris. So Chris, over to you. I think we're going to, for the reward for getting up so early, is that we give you the leisurely amount of about 4 minutes to introduce yourself, talk a bit about the ILN, and your views on how best the network should communicate. Chris, thanks for joining.
Yeah, great. Good morning from my side. Good afternoon from your side. I'm happy to be with you. So again, my name is Chris McCarthy, and I am the Executive Director of the Innovation Learning Network, and I'm also Vice President of Strategy and Innovation at Hope Lab. Hope Lab is a small not-for-profit that focuses on combining design and technology for young people's challenges like kids with cancer and mental well-being challenges for teenagers. Hope Lab is one of the 45 member organizations of the Innovation Learning Network. Now, that's the other side of my life, and that's what we're here to talk about. So although we're at 45 organizations right now in 2017, when we first started this, we had a small posse of very willing people, 32 people to be exact, across 8 organizations who back in 2006 decided to share their innovation knowledge and know-how. And to be honest, in 2006, I didn't even know that that was called a learning network. Although we called ourselves the Innovation Learning Network, we just thought we were a bunch of friends getting together to share best practices and help each other along. Actually, excuse me 1 second, my cat is pawing me, so I'm just trying to get her to stop doing that. So I'm just gonna pick her up. She's decided she wants to join this this broadcast. All right, now we're all good. This is what happens at 4 in the morning. Yeah, so it was really just it started off as a very small experiment, and I think what was most exciting then, which we've carried very much through the 12 years, we just turned 12 years this month. The 12 years of the Innovation Learning Network is we really value stewardship of our dollars and bootstrapping almost everything we do. We are the little engine that can, and we stretch every single precious dollar. I don't want to overstate it because I don't feel like we're stretching too hard. Like, we're just able to really make do with what we have and do some great stuff. So that's one of the early lessons in innovation networks, is that you don't need millions of dollars to do these things. You can really think creatively to bring folks together in a really cost-effective way. Yeah.
Chris, thank you very much. Could you just say a little bit about how, so you're now up to 45 member organisations, Chris. So how do conversations go on amongst your members when you're not meeting up face to face? How do people interact and talk?
Yeah, there are several ways. I would say the primary way that we kick off our conversations is with some sort of in-person interaction to get going. But after that, we quickly move to several different technologies. One technology which has been really beneficial to us, and I'm embarrassed to say that some of it's very low tech. One is a very simple collaborative platform called Basecamp. I think Basecamp is fairly popular for bootstrap kind of groups who are trying to pull things together because it's very inexpensive. It's very easy to administrate, but most importantly is that it can get around many organizations' IT challenges. When you have complex technologies, usually IT in your large organization may try to lock you out. And Basecamp is such a simple, ubiquitous tool that many organizations have not locked out, and there's no implementation. So you just go to the website and activate it. In the early days, and something that we are seriously considering bringing back because we think it's powerful, is an old-fashioned listserv. And listservs, those go back a couple decades, and I think back in the heyday of listservs, many of us started hating them because there were so many, and you just get thousands of emails into your inbox, and we were overwhelmed. That has changed dramatically. Listservs are kind of a throwback, and so that a lot of us are not using them, and yet it's one of the easiest ways to get people to get into a digital conversation with very low effort. And so that is one of the attributes of the ILN, is how in a low effort way can we keep people connected and moving. And one of the big lessons is nobody wants to log into a website. And so anytime you have to log into a new website and then hunt for the conversation you're interested in, you've basically wiped out almost anybody who has interest in connecting. So we're looking for ways that we can push to you and make it super easy for you to be a part of the conversation in a low effort way. We've been experimenting also with Twitter and Instagram and other social media sites, and I think they're okay, but for the kind of work that I see many healthcare organizations wanting to do, especially when they're collaborating, they don't necessarily want public forums to do it on. And so Basecamp, listservs, anything that is easy to administrate, low effort, and somewhat private, those are big winners, I think, and especially in our healthcare organizations.
Great, Chris, thanks so much. And just to clarify on bootstrapping, I'm taking that meaning. I think we're talking about doing it on a shoestring.
That is what we call it here, bootstrapping or shoestringing. Both of those are the same thing.
Great, Chris, thank you very much. Really good introduction. Anna, do you want to remind people how to get involved?
Sure, so either via Twitter using the hashtag NetworkFest and @CaseGoPealth, or via the chat box, which should be on your screens.
Excellent, thank you. So whilst questions are coming in, just one from me, Chris, and we'll go to questions, which is, so certainly a lot of my network experience is that you can create kind of a platform which you think is really nice and quite fancy, with lots of bells and whistles, but then no one uses it. And you're sort of left with this sort of pretty platform which nothing goes on. Do you do anything particularly within the sort of ILN sort of core to try and sort of prod or spark conversations or manage it in that way to keep things ticking?
Yes, and I would say we don't have the perfect answer, but we're always experimenting. Some of the things that beef up your traffic and getting people to interact is forcing people in a one-step process to go there. So for example, we have a monthly newsletter that is very snarky and very easy to get to. It comes into your email box. It has a very fun little voice to it. And we try to keep it a little bit old-fashioned looking. And there's a lot of just clickable links in there. And so the first thing we always open with is our calendar of events. And if you click on one of the calendar links, it takes you into our website, which you have to log into. But because someone has chosen a specific topic to get into the networking platform, that gets rid of people coming into your website and not knowing what to do. So they've come up with a purpose, and the purpose logs them in, and they get right to the calendar event that they want. And now they can sign up for the event, and then some conversation can get started because they're exactly where they intended to go to, as opposed to sending people to your website and then having them just click around and do stuff. That usually doesn't work very well. So like a listserv, I think in the United States, newsletters that get delivered to your email are surging in popularity. And even like the big news outlets like the New York Times now started last year with sending a digest, and it's one of their most popular services. And so these things that are, I think we all used to view our email as a waste zone, and now it's becoming popular again because we're starting to learn how to manage it, and now it's very timely and customized for me. I wake up in the morning, I get my New York Times newsletter. Once a month, the ILN is sending out a newsletter with hyperlinks, and it's driving traffic to our website.
Chris, great, thank you very much. Anna, do we have questions, comments coming through?
We do. We have a question from Helen. Thank you, Helen, about the balance between face-to-face and digital events. So Helen asks, do you need some face-to-face events, and how often do you need them for a network?
Oh boy, I think that it depends, and there's the cop-out answer. I am on the side that some face-to-face is important, especially in establishing the roots of a networking organization. And in that in-person, you're really establishing trust. I'm getting to know you as a human, and we're kind of developing our friendships so that when we move into the digital space, all of those human elements are present as a foundation, and we can kind of get to what we need to get to. I don't know about you, but I'm always thrown when I get an email, even from an acquaintance, maybe I don't know so well, who's asking me for something, and I will try to get to that, but that usually goes to the back burner for me to address things that are more important, or from people that I really care about. That goes to the front burner. And so developing real friendships, which is why I think a lot of us want to gather, and because we care as humans for each other, we have similar missions, and aligning these things allow the digital experiences to be much greater. Once you have that trust, you can launch new initiatives digitally, and collaborate in the ways that we're doing now. Like we have an ocean and a continent between us, and yet we can see each other, and there's some trust here. But if you don't have this and you're trying to do everything, with email or with a chat bot or any of those kinds of things, it's very hard to get going. So once the trust is there, which I think is the best way, is starting in person, then you can move digital. Another way into this challenge is you don't have to gather 100 people to start developing the relationships. So in the Innovation Learning Network, we started off with what we call twosies and threesies. And that is trying to find 2 people or 3 people to gather and develop their relationship. So it's not about 10, 20, or 100. The real power of our networks is we can get 2 people of our 100 or 3 people of our 100 to get together and start that snowball going. And so we've really capitalized on the 2s and 3s. When it's 3 or more in the ILN will contribute some administrative time to help get them together digitally. But thinking small can go a long, long way, whether it's dollars or just getting a few people together to get an idea moving.
Do you find that those 2s and 3s, are they geographically based to begin with, or are they always digital meetings?
So if they've already established a relationship, then geography doesn't matter. If they don't have a relationship, then I think geography does matter. And so another attribute of the ILN that we've been pushing on is what is called ILN local. And so when we have more than 2 organizations in the same geography, we host local events for them, just 1 or 2 times a year, to bring them together for a beer or a glass of wine in a bar, and just to get to know each other. And those little gatherings of just of me getting to see you and having a glass of wine. Now, when I want to do something with you, I can put you 2 together, and you again have that spark of trust and that spark of friendship. So I think as long as there's some relationship there, geography does not matter. The NHS and the Health Foundation in England are both members of the ILN, and we can call each other up and we can see each other, and we're happy to start working on something together. But if I don't know an organization or somebody, that gets really complicated. So doing something local and getting that moving is also another great way to fuel these networks.
Great, Chris. So it seems like there's a maxim there of do lunch first, then launch your digital stuff after that.
Yeah, wine and dine me just a little bit before you ask for the big punch.
Chris, great stuff. Anna.
Yeah. Just to clarify on your points around bringing the 2 to 3 people together, Chris, you were saying that initially if they don't know each other, then it would have to be face-to-face, and otherwise, following on from that, it could be more digital. Someone was just asking a question about that.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be. I think what I'm suggesting is what I think is a best practice. If you want to accelerate the connection and the learning and sharing, if you have an established relationship, that is always the most powerful way. If you don't do that, then these things take a lot longer. And I think we've all been a part of collaboratives or even small groups who don't know each other, who are trying to get the ball moving, and you spend more time trying to get to know each other and figuring out work styles and even trying to figure out the technology that's going to connect us. And when you start off from a friendship level, for some reason, all of that infrastructure is sped up, all of that early piece of it that takes so long to get things moving. We've already done some of that work already. And so you've greased the wheels of getting right to what you really want to do, is do something together that's of high value to both your organizations.
Can I ask a question just about, you said about experimenting today, and one of the things I'd like to know is about scaling up. You know, the Innovation Learning Network's obviously grown quite a lot in the last 12 years. And in terms of experimenting things, have you tried a few different platforms? Have you moved around? And how easy is it to do that in a network?
And Chris, what's failed as well? Tell us what went abominably wrong.
Ooh. Let's see. I would say one of the big failures was trying to use a wiki site for a networking platform. I do not advise that. Wikis are not designed for networking, but you know, we were young and we were cheap, and wikis were super cheap back then. I would say our current platform, which we've been on for a long time, was a resounding yawn. Sometimes it worked okay, and most of the time it's been a problem, and that's the Ning platform. If you're not familiar with Ning, that is a service that tries to create your own version of Facebook for your network, and one of the big challenges with things like Ning is again, it's logging into this separate site and expecting people just to go there and do stuff. Now, our workaround that we finally discovered a few years ago was direct traffic specifically, and I talked about this a few minutes ago, put a link in for the calendar invite into a newsletter, and then they tunnel right into the website. And so that has been beneficial, but the Ning technology I don't think is modern, and I think it's too clunky. We're about to launch a brand new platform called Your Membership that will go live on January 1st, and we have high hopes for it, but we also have tempered hopes because we know our lessons from Ning, and so we still expect to drive traffic through links to specific functions within Your Membership. One of the reasons why we chose Your Membership is because in 2018 they will be launching as a piece of their service the old-fashioned listserv that I talked about earlier, which was actually quite good in the early days of the ILN. And so via lists, you can now interact simultaneously either through listserv or directly on the site, whatever your preference is. And that's the kind of stuff that I think we need to get to in our networking. Not everybody wants old-fashioned email to interact with one another, and not everybody wants a website. But if there's a technology that can link these different functions and make it seamless, which I think is some of the power of Basecamp, because that is something you can do with Basecamp, then I think we're getting into something that's really interesting. Basecamp has been kind of a safety net for us. So we always expected when a collaborative was to begin that we would host that inside of the Ning platform, and that just was always a disaster. And so when a collaborative of folks decided to get together, we would create a Basecamp for them. The problem with Basecamp is that it's really not a networking tool. It is a project management and collaboration tool. And so, you know, for the past several years, we've been using both Ning and Basecamp together. We hope that with the Your Membership site that we can go to one platform, but I think Basecamp is always a nice safety net, and it's a great tool for a collaborative when you're trying to run a project.
Chris, thank you very much. It's probably time to say this session is brought to you by Basecamp. Your solution. No, it's not. It really isn't. Anna, next question.
Yes, we've got a few questions lined up. So one from Gemma. Thank you, Gemma. Chris, what's your view on how much resource, either people, time, or money, is required to run an online network such as the one you've described?
So I think at a bare bones, you could probably get away with 3 to 4 full-time people who are cultivating the network. And let me just take a step back. I'm assuming that it also means to run the network. And so that means when you run a network, not only do you need to provide a platform, but you need to have outreach to your organizations and be active in cultivating that relationship and potentially new relationships. So those two things, I think you need 3 to 4 full-time people in order to do both of those. If you're going to add on any kind of in-person stuff, you're talking about adding 1 to 2 more people. At least that's from my experience. I think that is the bare minimum in order to do these things really well. Yeah.
And just a follow-up question to that, what is no money? What can you do with it?
This is the NHS.
Or no resource.
I hear you say 3 or 4 people. What about none? What if there's no money?
Yeah. So there are some workarounds on this. So one is, if passion is really high, you can run a volunteer based organization. And I think once you get a collaborative and a group of people together, that collaborative, and that's the way we run our collaboratives, it's really based on volunteer and passion. So it is the core team running the ILN, but when a collaborative forms, it is the passion of the 3 to 5 people or more who take control. And so that really is a volunteer-based way of running the collaboratives, and I think that can be used to run the network as well. But you just have to set your expectations that they're going to be a little bit lower. You're not going to have full-time people really fueling what this does. And so I think if you set your expectations well, that these things can happen. The other way to think about resourcing is, if the organization's involved, if they see the value or feel the value, we've had organizations donate small people time to this. So one person from an organization may get 5 or 10% of their time to dedicate to the network. If you can get 3 or 4 organizations to dedicate one person with just 10% time, that's 4 hours per week that per organization. That's a lot of time and a lot of energy to drive these things. And so we've given them a special title. We call them network weavers in the ILN. And so we have 45 network weavers, and they're often doing their own thing. And that to us is super exciting, but they're under the ILN umbrella. So although it's not any dollars, organizations have made a commitment to say, we want this to work, and we can't give you money, but we can give you some time of an employee. And so that's another way to think about how to build your resources and way to get things done.
Chris, thank you very much. We've got one final question, I think, where we've got 2 minutes left in the whole shebang. So Anna, if we have 7 seconds reading out the question, Chris, if then we have 24 seconds responding to it, we can still come up on time. There we go. This is the precise. I'll shut up. Anna.
Okay, thanks. So just following on from your point, Chris, about the number of people that you can have involved in managing the network, have you experienced that a bias in the direction of where the network is going could occur?
So in 24 seconds, size does matter. So you want to be, so what I found the most powerful stuff is when it becomes either intimate or a sense of intimacy as you're creating your networks. And so we really focus on, even as we are growing, and we are growing, we have 3,000 members and 45 organizations, but in all of the events that we hold, we drive a sense of intimacy. And so things like our dinner with strangers, and our things like randomized coffee trials, where you're bringing together 2 people who don't know each other, and we're constantly focusing on the individual relationships, even during our biggest meetings. And that is a kind of a nod to the size issue. Like, there's the last thing any of us want is to go to a conference with 5,000 people and be treated as a herd. And so we're trying to get away. We've always tried to celebrate the individual, even in our biggest groups. Yeah.
Chris, that's a remarkably articulate response, both for 24 seconds and that it's still at 4:30 a.m., which is just ludicrous. So we are out of time. So Chris, I'm going to turn to you in just 1 second, if okay, just to give your one ultimate piece of advice for anyone thinking about communication network, your final task. But Anna, just remind us what's up next.
Yeah, so we have 2 more webinars this week. Tomorrow is about measuring success, and we have George Jalal and Sam Jones joining us for that. And on Friday, we end with or discussing the natural life of networks, and we've got Professor Becky Mulvey joining us for that one.
Excellent. Please do sign up, all free. Chris, your last nugget of wisdom before you go back to bed.
Yeah, so this is for the participants of networks. Really, a tiny bit of contribution goes a long way. You take all those tiny bits together, and it's a massive change. And so we really celebrate small contributions. If everybody gives a little, a ton is received by everybody, and that is the value proposition of the ILN. And so the expectation is very low. But it is, you must contribute something, and it just needs to be a little bit, and everybody gets to benefit because so much knowledge is flowing now across a network.
Chris, thank you. What a fantastic place to end on. Chris, we're incredibly grateful for your time.
Before we go, Chris's blog, Fantastic Open Letter to the Network Skeptic, is now available on the Kaleidoscope website, and I recommend it.
Excellent.
Now you can finish.
Now, thank you very much, David. Round for that. Chris, thank you once again. Thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope to see you on future webinars this week. We'll see you then. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Good night.